HD television is on the air. Welcome to a brand new season of the Author's Corner, the first one of 2023. As always, I'm your host, H.D. Campbell. I am so excited to be here for another season. I have a lot of things to share with you. There's going to be a lot of things going on here in the Author's Corner, outside the Author's Corner. There's a new book being launched tomorrow. I have some new stuff going on. There's going to be so much going on that I'll be telling you throughout different episodes of this show. One big change in the Author's Corner is going to be I'm exclusively back to only interviewing authors, editors, book promoters, publishers. This is exclusively going to be back for the writing industry. Actually, and people will say, well, it never has. We always had other people. Well, not shiny at other people, but they now have their own show, which is going to air right after the Author's Corner. My second show, the Artist's Corner, in which if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a comedian, if you have a movie to promote, you have a business to promote, if you're a politician, if you anything that's going on outside the literary world that you have going on, the Artist's Corner is for you. So stay tuned right after the Author's Corner tonight for a very special episode, very first special episode, which I get to interview a good friend of mine, comedian Ronnie J, who's blowing up in St. Louis. We had a lot to talk about. There's just so much going on. So again, stay tuned. But after the fact, the Artist Corner is going to start airing on Fridays, and with the Artist Corner will still start airing on Mondays. That way, you're not overwhelmed with two good shows at once. On to some news real quick. Morning Musings, a 30-day devotional by Katara Johnson, will release tomorrow. Get ready. It'll be in Kindle. It'll be a Nook. It will be at Barnes and Noble. It'll be a little bit everywhere. So please, definitely check her out. I'll be doing some features with her. We'll be doing some more promo spots. Get ready to meet Katara Johnson because she's about to take everybody by storm. I mean, just like all of my other hard drive authors. I mean, I'm talking about C Love. I'm talking about Thunderheart Lion. I'm talking about so many people in the hard drive, and I have a few more coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's talk about the show a little bit. For this inaugural show of 2023, I have three. I tell them three. Well, actually, two and one. Amazing interviews. First, I have Sisters Rock and Rhyme, and we're talking about poetry. We're talking about what drives poetry. We're talking about old school hip hop. We're talking about so much stuff, all dabbling in the world of poetry. These are two sisters who just come together and mesh. They mesh together and just, I mean, you just got to hear them. And I get treated to a poem or two. Next, we're going to talk to my friend Margo Thomas. As everybody knows, years ago, I lost a wife. I lost my first wife back in December of 2010. And Author Thomas, who also suffered a loss, she lost her husband, wrote a book on how to grieve, on how to. Now, everyone say we should move on. You never move on. You can move past, but you never move on. You can never move on. You can always move past the hurt. Because the hurt is always going to be there. And then you still have to be there for your children. You still have to be there for your loved ones. You have to be there for everyone. Losing and burying somebody is so hard. And not saying that Author Thomas's book makes it easier, but it sure does help you to cope with a lot of the grief. So stay tuned for that. So when we come back, we'll talk to Sisters Rock and Rhyme. Last night I saw the Grammys and they gave like this big, homage to 50 years of hip hop. And if you're a hip hop head, such as myself, and and yes, I'm dating myself, but I'm just so as hip hop is, you would truly understand Sisters Rock and Rhyme, because just like hip hop, poetry reflects our environment, what we love, where we live. I mean, the sisters even touched on it a little bit. So I'm just gonna just let you hear what they have to say, and then we'll talk later.
Lars?
Well, my sister actually came up with Sisters Rock and Rhyme. But we, we're sisters, so we always been together. But it was it was finding out that both of us wrote poetry. That was the surprise. I did it in secret, where my sister was more vocal about her writing. I did it because I was journaling, and it kind of happened by just a fluke. What happened was, I was journaling and I was, trying to find out why things were happening in my life that was, and I was trying to understand myself. And so I was journaling, and I went back and read some of my entries, and I noticed that some of them had like a rhythm to it. And I was like, wow, that kind of read like a poem, and I liked it. And so I kept doing it. And that's how I started writing poetry. Mm-hmm. And then my sister, she always told me about her poems, and we always wanted to write a book together. We said when we were about maybe about 7 or 8 that we were gonna write our life story,
right?
And we were gonna call it People Who Live in Glass Houses, and we are gonna tell that story, but poetry kind of took the forefront. And when Cheryl, you could take the story from here. Why don't you take it from here? Because you could tell about how Daddy wanted to see our writing and stuff like that. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, it's really a short story from there. It's basically our dad wanted to see our writings in one space because we had been reading our writings to him over the years. He'd seen us working on different things. And literally one Thanksgiving, we were reading out of our journals about our family members. My dad got sick with stage 4 prostate cancer, and we very quickly took 20 years or better of writing. And we said, we're going to do this book in honor of him, in his honor of our parents' memory. And we're going to put all of these writings in one book. And that turned into our first book, which was Different Sides of the Same Coin, this book. And that was one Thanksgiving. And then the following year, when COVID hit, the next year, we came out with our second book, which is Mirrored Images, and that's our dad's story. So our first book, HD, was more of an homage to our mother.
Family.
And our family.
To our family, actually.
Right, to our family. But it had a lot of things that were special to her memory. Like she loved slave spirituals, Negro spirituals. So the chapters open up with those Negro spirituals in it.
Mm-hmm.
In the second book, which is more, of our dad's stories, it opens up with blues because that's the kind of guy he was. He just, sat at a bar drinking, and he listened to blues music all the time.
I love that. I love that. So in addition to your parents' memory, what is the basis of your poetry?
It's just life. It is whatever is happening. It's Black history in real time. It is,
Absolutely.
when, like she said, when the pandemic broke out, we were hearing about Breonna Taylor. We were hearing about Donald Trump in office. A lot of our poetry is reflective of that. And we all, along with, we were taking care of our sick father. So, nostalgia came in, and we wrote a lot of poems about him and our different relationships with him. And, we wrote about, the hood, and we wrote about, just being Black, in our lives. And especially as older Black women, we have a lot to say. So that's basically what our poetry is about. It's about Black life.
It occurred to me, HD, that during the release of both of our books, killings of Black people were at an all-time high during the release of both of those books. We're writing our third book right now. And right now, we're in the face of yet another Tyree Nichols national shooting. And it's just very interesting to me at this point in time. You see, it's imperative that Black writers pick those pens up in real time and just be the voice of what is taking place in the world right now.
That's right.
And that's what our job is. That is what James Baldwin did. That is what Bell Hooks did. That is what Maya Angelou did. That is what all of the great writers, Langston Hughes before us, they all wrote in real time what was going on in their social standings.
Yes.
And so that's the job.
Especially in the climate that we are in now, at this very minute, when you actually have someone in the government that is sanctioning, sanctioning, deleting and erasing, retelling our story, saying that certain parts of our history cannot be taught.
Mm-hmm.
They are censoring, literally censoring books in schools because they're offended by their behavior. So we're not going to tell that side of it. So we got to rewrite it and delete it and whitewash it so that Sally and David won't be offended. It is important that we, as Black people, pick up a pen and write.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you guys brought that up because, see, as like you've been on my page, I've been reading a lot. In fact, I'm actually about to order you guys books. There's so much going on in the world. We really need, I guess, we need more words out there than we do. And how can I put this? We need more powerful words out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need our own voice.
Yesterday, I just saw a good man's funeral. And I know you guys follow the Tyre Nichols case.
Yes.
Yes.
And from hearing Al Sharpton's words and so many other words, and like you said, the fact that they're whitewashing history right now.
Right.
What can we do to take up the fight if they're banning books right now, if they're banning words and voices? What can we do to take up the fight as authors?
HD,
well, we just said it.
HD, you don't get quiet at this time.
Right.
You don't close your eyes and pretend like this doesn't affect you and that this isn't happening. Right. Now it's when you become more vocal. Now is when you really dig in, because they're doing all of this in an attempt to silence you.
Right.
To silence you, to keep you from not speaking about your history. They're not doing this to anybody else except Black writers. Right. They're not doing this to Hispanic writers. They're not doing this to any other Vietnamese writer. They're not doing this to any other group of people. They're banning Bluest Eye, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. They're banning her books. And so as a Black writer, you double down and triple down, because if we learn nothing else, Donald Trump showed all of us, you dig in. You with a dogged persistence, you don't relent. You keep,
and that's right, Cheryl, because that's what James Baldwin and Langston Hughes did. Mm-hmm. They spoke their truth. And let me tell you, anytime you speak your truth and you record your truth, and you don't try to whitewash it or take it down, they will come to you.
Yes.
Trust me, they will come to you. They always do.
You write your story. You tell your narrative. If you
don't want to write, then you like Cheryl just said, you tell it. I tell you what you can do as a hood rat or a hood individual.
No. I'm a hood writer.
Oh, a hood writer.
Right. Hood books.
Okay, that's even better because you are telling the story. Let me tell you something. When I was in college, I grew up and around the time of Public Enemy and And by the time I got to college, NWA was getting popular, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, that's some ghetto stuff. Oh my God, I don't know what I don't like that. But as I grew older and you get wiser, and I'm listening to them tell their story, I'm listening to the value in it because they were telling what was happening to our Black men while it was happening, the way it was happening, the way they could express themselves. That in itself is value. That's why, when you hear these people talking about you got to speak the King's English, you have to speak. Let me tell you, when you go back and you listen to the way old Black Southerners spoke, there is value in that because we are listening to a language that they had to teach themselves. No one taught them the word is ask. No one taught them that. It sounded like they were saying ask. That they were saying X. So they said X. There is value in that because that is history. That is how we learned how to speak this language. If it wasn't for our ancestors speaking the way they speak, we would not be here to speak standard English today. So there is value in any story that you want to tell. If you're a hood writer, write your story. Write it from where you're at. You don't have to come up, you don't have to come down, you don't have to go sideways, you don't have to do anything. You can write from where you are. There is value in that.
I'm glad you guys understood the question because we all, as authors, have talent to use our talent. I don't care what we write.
That's right.
Use what we write in order to tell our story.
And now that it's a shame but now that I'm 55, I absolutely love Ice Cube. I love Dr. Dre. I love Snoop Dogg. I love it all because you know what? It tells the story. It tells what happens.
That's it.
And it is history. That is history. And you'll never be able to take away my Public Enemy. I love Public Enemy. I started out with Public Enemy. I love them. But I also see the value, like I said, a Dr. Dre, Ice Cube. I see value in that.
All of it.
Yes, indeed.
Now I want to switch gears for a second. I'm going to take it out of our peer group right now and talk about our readers. What do we want our readers to know when we present, when you present your story, your truth, your poetry?
Well, we're touching on all of that right now, HD. When you write books and you know who your audience is, you're speaking to your audience the way they speak. Right. And that's the beauty of what we're writing about. We're not concerned with using the King's English. Right. We are concerned with relating to our audience the way they speak.
Or the way we speak. The way we used to speak. Right. I do a lot of poems in the old vernacular because I love the rhythm of it. Yes. I love the expression of it. So I value that language. So I write in that language.
Why don't you read a poem for HD so he'll know exactly what we're talking about? How about that?
I would love that.
Oh my goodness. She has put me on the.
Well, Loris, it's one thing to say that you write in our rhythm. And it's one thing to say that you're using our vernacular. But
go ahead.
Okay.
Different sides of the same coin has a lot of it in there.
Right. I'm going to say real quick before she gets started, that puts me in mind of an interview with Terry McMillan.
Yes.
About her books, and they talk about the language, they talk about everything, and she answers, not all of my characters went to Oxford School of English. So I'm going to speak the way my peers speak.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, well, this isn't necessarily in, okay,
You have
all
Sister
right.
Serenade on page 232. Why don't you read that
Sister Serenade on page 232.
in the first book?
Right.
Oh, by the way, one more thing. This interview is taped, so some of this, while she wait, I'm gonna cut that out. So
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Here, this is Sister Serenade, and it goes, girl, what you been doing? You been living? And life done caught you off guard. I heard you been talking to the preacher man, talking to your friend down the hall. You even been talking to that old man on the corner. Did they tell you anything you want to hear? What you want to know, sister girl? Will the snow fall tomorrow? What you want to know? How the rain fell in Spain? Listen, girl, ain't no streets called easy. No sun-drenched path leading to brighter tomorrows. Ain't no Prince Charmings coming down, no yellow brick roads. It just ain't. You gotta get your head together. Today ain't yesterday, and yesterday ain't tomorrow. We living for today, and today is all it is. You reflect back too long, you find yourself lost in what was. Ain't no wish I could have or if onlys. All it is what it is. You did what I'm saying? That's an example of what I'm talking about.
And see, you're speaking to me like, how can I put this? Well, basically, you're speaking to me like you just, regular speak. You see what I'm saying? You're not. In other words, you're not like you guys just said.
I'm not using standard English.
We're speaking like you and I just speaking on the street.
Right.
I love that. I truly love that.
And I've had I've had intellectuals and scholars that are Black people try to make me ashamed of writing a book of poems in non-standard King's English.
Yeah.
Now imagine that. This didn't come from people that didn't look like me. This didn't come from our Caucasian audience. This came from Black intellectuals and scholars.
Our own people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to explain, this is a question and you guys can, and you guys can answer. The reason why we have a hip hop culture, the reason why we have so much of a rise in African American authors is because we have the ability to speak to each other the way we talk. We don't, I'm not gonna throw at you again the Oxford English Dictionary. No, I'm gonna talk to you the way I'm talking to you now.
Right.
So for our own people to come at us like this is very sad.
Yes.
And very hurtful.
Yeah. That's what that's one of our messages to young writers. Don't try to please them, because if you notice, some of the greatest writers in history are not those that tried to please them. They are those that tried to please themselves and their people. They came to us. Alex Haley didn't write about how great one white man came and saved us Black Negroes from slavery. He told our story, and what happened? It got on TV, and the whole nation watched it. Now, could you imagine if he had turned that into a story about how this white man came from afar to save these poor, pitiful Negroes? Nobody would have watched that.
Oh no.
That's why I tell people, let them come to you. Don't take yourself down. Be you. Be all the great, soulful, lovely stuff that the Lord made us to be. Be that. and let them come to you.
Yeah, I find it to be so beautiful because now this comes to my next question, and this is actually a less serious but a more serious question. I'm a huge Sister Soldier fan. One of my favorite songs is Slavery's Back in Effect, Final Solution. And there's a line in that song that goes, the Super Mac Daddy Pimp system is over. In other words, we don't have time for that anymore. We're at war right now.
Yeah, you know what? That is the 90s militant era. I was really, we were really coming to ourselves. That's when we were in college. I mean, I'm telling you, HD, we were blacker than black. Everything was black. Our mother dragged us around from one black meeting to another black meeting.
So did.
Our mother was, she was a Black Panther. She was, sold to the sister, and then when in the 90s, when all of that stuff came back, she was dragging us from every black thing you could imagine. So I know where Sister Soldier was coming from because my mother loved Sister Soldier, of course.
Yes.
And, we love Sister Soldier, but
yes.
Like I said, I go back to my original statement that there's value in everything, You go back and you think those old movies with Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier, oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, who wants to see Shaft and all of that stuff? Yeah, I want to see it.
I do.
I want to see it. I tell my son about it. He knows about Shaft. My son is 21 years old. Doggone well, he don't know nothing hardly about Shaft. Nope. But I let him watch that stuff because that is where we came from. If there was no Shaft, there would be no Black Panther. Don't people get that?
Well, you know what? I tell people all the time, 'cause I'm a huge Shaft fan. Shaft was my first superhero as a kid. I want to put him in. He was my first superhero. I don't care what nobody say. So, yes.
And I love me some Huggy. I'm sorry, but I'll go back and watch Starsky and Hutch just so I can see Huggy.
Exactly. I'm telling you, if I could go back and watch all of that, I would, most definitely.
Yes, indeed.
So, oh, by the way, if this, like I say, if this shuts down, I am inviting y'all back. And this conversation is getting too good. I'm sorry. I'm enjoying this conversation. My next question for you guys is, all right, so we were talking about all this. Have you guys been able to go out and do any lectures or teach? I know we just got out of COVID, but have you guys been able to actually meet your readers or do anything?
It's been really hard for us, HD, because we are split up. Mm-hmm. When I was in Chicago, in my hometown, with my sister, we could go out together all the time. So now we're having to do things separately, but we're still SistersRoc'N'Rhyme, but we're having to do it virtually now. And we're having to do it because a lot of the COVID mandates, depending upon where you live, kind of really never really went away. Right. So right now, you still kind of have to socially distance yourself. You're still masked to a great degree wherever you are.
But Cheryl, tell them about your awesome experience in the library that you had. You remember when you did your reading in the library?
Well, right. So there are those opportunities that present themselves, and I want to do more of those because I actually went to the Marshall County Library here, and it was such a positive experience. And I think what surprised people mostly about that experience was the poems that related directly to history. And that's what they're trying to silence right now. But even in that audience where there were lots of Caucasian people in that library, they rushed me at the end because I guess, and I'm in the South, in the Confederate South, you think, where the Confederate flags literally just came down here about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But the history, the written record of what we're able to talk about and what we do talk about in both of our books is important.
Yes.
And so we do spend a lot of time with the tales of our parents and what it was like for them growing up as young people in the segregated South. And we actually are daughters of sharecroppers who had to grow up in the segregated South. And so we talk that history lives inside of us. And we are writing about that history. Now, that's not all we write about.
No.
My sister, my God, I just love her. She is my favorite writer because she's got HD, she's got stuff right there on the order of Maya Angelou. She's got stuff right there on the order of writers like that because we studied those people. And when I tell you that it's really that good, that's not me being prejudiced or biased. That is just the breadth, the scope, and the depth of her talent, her God-given talent. And so we have a lot of women empowerment. We have a lot of love for our black men and our sons and you know, our significant others. We have love poems in here. There's something in here for everyone. We don't just have just a book about stuff related to women. We have stuff in here about the African-American experience.
Right.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to let my sister, I'm going to just give way to this because she is so good with this topic. I have a lot of Black love poems in here.
Yeah, you need to talk about it because you have more Black love poems than I have.
Where we both pay homage to Black men. We as Black women should not be bashing or tearing down Black men. That's tearing down yourself.
Exactly.
Black men should not be tearing down Black women.
No.
You have a Black mother and a sister. That's tearing down yourself. And we don't do it here. Sisters Rock and Rhyme, we uplift and hold up Black males because we understand that you're part of who we are.
We understand that you are the head and we honor you in that way. And we have nothing but love for the brothers. We're not silly enough to say that everything is perfect. No, we know. As a matter of fact, I want the brothers to really understand how great they really are and how much they are needed in the community and in the culture. And my sister and I was just talking about this earlier today.
biggest pet peeves when I was going through my grieving process, when I lost my first wife, Vilma, was I had to deal with people who would tell me how to grieve, or that I shouldn't grieve, or not even grieve around them to the point where I guess I'm getting on their nerves. Either way, there is no manual on grieving, on moving on. There is no timetable. There are no rules. One thing that I enjoyed with Margo Thomas when I spoke to her, we talked about the grieving process. And throughout that process, she learned to do lessons. And I've learned to do lessons. I really wish I had her book at that time, because I would have definitely read it. Which I'm reading it now, but at the time, everything was new, which is everything was new to her. She managed to put everything into a book. And throughout that process, that was her process for healing. So without further ado, here's the chat we have with Author Margo Thomas.
Okay, so the first 28 came out of, well, I lost my husband a year ago, October 2nd, 2021. He was diagnosed with cancer in August of 2020. And so we went through the journey and then, finally we lost him. And as I was just going through the process, because for me, I didn't know too many people that lost a spouse. Recently, around that time, a friend of mine had lost her spouse, maybe I want to say 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 weeks before. They both were dealing with cancer, and then he passed, and then my husband passed, and just trying to navigate all of the different things that we don't usually think about, like life insurance, like figuring out Social Security, retirement, just all of the little things, selling his car. And so it's just little things that you have to deal with that, no one really talks about. And then often you just really don't know what you don't know. And it's difficult navigating the waters because who do you ask? And I found that a lot of people were not as sympathetic as you were going through the process. So one example was I was trying to get his life insurance policy, and it had already been, well, actually both life insurance policies took a while. One took 3 months, one took 6 months, just about. And we were just, you're working with someone. I'd called to say, hey, I sent the paperwork, just checking to see, can you give me a timeline? And she said, oh, well, I just got it. And it's like, okay, well, I'm being patient. So call back. She said, well, give me about 2 weeks. I called back in 2 weeks. She said, oh, well, I have 13 of these on my desk. And I thought, well, yeah, that's all well and fine. But 2 weeks ago, he was one that you had. So the 13 you have to shouldn't include him. And then it was like going back and starting all over again with her because she didn't remember anything. And then when I told her, she said, oh, well, oh, yeah, I needed to ask you something about that because something you submitted wasn't correct. And I said, well, okay, what was it? And she said, well, you didn't provide some paperwork that I was supposed to provide. And I said, well, yeah, I provided everything was in the envelope. And so she looks in the envelope and she says, oh, I guess someone put it in the envelope. It's right on my desk. And it's like, well, yeah, it was all in the envelope initially. So it was just like some of those things you think people would be a little bit more sympathetic with, or a little bit more graceful with you. And I found that a lot of people weren't. And so it was just difficult. It was a difficult time. And then even the point of, so, family and friends would say, well, what do you need? And in those moments, I realized for me, I didn't know what I needed. Like it was, okay, I know I need food, right? That's important in this moment. But it was just me. Our daughter was 30. Well, oh Lord, she's not 30. She's almost 30, but she lived far away. And so it was really just me. So I didn't need like, a big meal or anything like that. And often I just couldn't think of what I needed. And so I think even for us telling someone, I don't know what I need in this moment, but whatever you think I need, then, you do that, or come back to me in a couple of days and maybe I'll be better with telling you what I need in that moment. But so it's just the basic navigation of you're already highly stressed and overwhelmed because the grief is so overwhelming that you're missing that person so much. But then there are so many of the other little things that need to happen day to day that you just have to think about it. And it takes so much brain bandwidth. And then even for me was I realized that I forgot a lot of things. There were so many things that I was forgetting. And I was really concerned about it. But I'd been talking to a counselor and she says, oh, that's widow's brain. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then I talked to my doctor and I told her the same thing. And she says, yeah, you're grieving. It's a lot of stuff happening. And so until you're in that space, you don't know that those things are even something to think about. Because I genuinely got afraid, like, okay, Lord, I can't remember anything. And so everything from then, not right now, everything I put in my phone, if someone says, can I meet you for coffee at 2 o'clock on Tuesday? While I'm standing there, I put that in my phone because I know that on Tuesday, I'm not going to remember that. So it's just navigating all of those different things that come along with losing a spouse. And so that book, I did it. So when I wrote that book, it was almost a year as I've been going through it. But I thought about the first month of losing your spouse, I think is one of the most difficult times because you're moving on autopilot, just trying to figure things out. And being able to have something to guide you just through, it can be used anytime, but having something to just guide you through that first month, I think would be beneficial for someone. And that's why I wrote it.
I'll tell you this, I'm not gonna go into anything individual because we can go on for days and this interview is not about me, but it's about you. Um One of the main reasons I wanted to do this interview is because in 2010 I lost my first wife.
Okay.
And it was around Christmas time. And I really couldn't use that because I was on autopilot. 7-year-old son. Not everybody's not sympathetic. Had a lot of people who helped, but there were a lot of people who helped me out a lot, but not everybody was sympathetic.
Right.
And navigating this and that and the other, believe me, it will take its toll. So, but I'm not, but think about it, this interview is not about me, it's about you. So basically, now that you've written the book, has the book been any therapy to you, or how has the book helped you?
Well, the book came out of the therapy is helping me before. So I wrote it. I'm a part of an authors group. And so I've been writing before, and writing for me has been healing as I went through this process, just kind of writing down my feelings. And then I had participated in a mourners group, I guess, for lack of a better term, with a friend of mine who actually had lost her husband after me. And she said, well, my church is doing this group and, I want you to go along with me. So I went, and one of the exercises we did once at 1 week was write a love letter to your spouse. And that letter, I think, was harder for me than anything else because as you were writing it, just everything comes out, like all of your thoughts, all of the things that you know that you're missing now, things that you know you'll miss in the future. And so all of those things spill out. So that was one of the exercises that we did. And I do something similar in the journal. And then another exercise was we were supposed to bring a picture of our loved one, any picture. We chose what that picture was. And I took a silly photo because my husband liked to do silly things. So we were, we were fun together. And this picture was, I had gone to take a picture at a mural, which is something like street art that I like doing. And I asked him if he wanted to go with me, and he said, sure. And I did what I normally do, which was take my tripod, my cell phone, and I took pictures that way. Well, I was taking a picture and he jumped in front of me. And so he had this, this expression on his face. And that was typical of him. So I took that picture. And initially I didn't know what to expect from me in that moment, or either from any of the other ladies that were part of this group. And these women had lost, kids, spouses, it wasn't just everyone with spouses. And so what I thought was interesting was that every person there brought a fun, silly picture of their person, and we all laughed about it. So we were able to tell about the fun things that happened in that moment when that picture was taken. And so for me, that was something that I thought, oh, that was great, because we don't always need to cry. I mean, and I won't say that I cry often, but I laugh often as well. And I believe that laughter is a good medicine, and it helps ease the pain just a little bit. So in that moment, what could have been a really somber moment turned out to be a really fun and uplifting moment, because we remembered the good things. And so in that journal, that's one of the exercises as well every week is, finding a picture that represents whatever the theme is. So the themes were comfort, strength, peace, and hope were what the themes were for each week. And so I encourage a person to find a picture that represented that, whatever that theme was for the week. And then the goal is, as you go back after a month, you look back and you say, oh, okay. Oh yeah, I remember this. The thoughts could be a little bit more positive than it is negative in those moments. And then other exercises, like I just asked check-in questions in the morning and check-in questions in the evening. And some of those, because I know for Black women, we're always taught to be strong. And sometimes we take the weight of the world on our shoulders. And so I wanted us to think about not always being strong and being willing to ask someone for help. And so in it, like maybe the morning check-in was, what three things have to get done today? And then you write those 3 things down. And then in the evening, it's, well, what did you get done today? Or, what 3 things were needed? Who can help you with one of those 3 things? Because they need to be done, but you don't have to be the person that does them all the time. And it could be something as simple as cleaning my house. Like, what needs to be done today is clean the house. And, who can you get to help? Maybe you get an adult child. Maybe you get a friend that comes over. Or one of the big things that we have to do, after losing a spouse, is eventually cleaning your closet, taking their stuff out of the closet. And, that's a difficult thing. And so for some people, it may have been having someone come and help you go through that process. And it's just asking people to help you. And I think it forces us. My hope was that in some way, I won't say force, I will say it would encourage the person to ask somebody for help for that particular task that needs to be done.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second. Camilla, into the book facility. A lot of things you talk about, I wish I kind of have help with, like cleaning out the closet. So you suggest getting help with simple tasks like that, getting help with as far as getting stuff out and what to do with them. And so how difficult was that for you?
It wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And I will say I did it earlier than I expected I would do it, but there was underlying reasons. So I live in Florida. I was living in Tallahassee, Florida. My daughter lived in Jacksonville, Florida. And I had decided, because my husband and I had talked about it even way before, we were saying when we retired, we would move to Jacksonville so that we would be able to spend more time with our grandkids. So when he passed, to me, that was the opportunity to move, because even though I have really, really great friends in Tallahassee, I didn't have any family there. And my daughter was driving back and forth, and I was driving back and forth to help each other. And so for me, it was easier to move to Jacksonville so that she didn't have to move back and forth, and that we would be able to support each other as we go through the process. And so obviously I had to move and I didn't need to pack all of that stuff with me. But for me, one of the things that made it easier was I decided that I would not donate, I would give all of his clothing, shoes, and he had a lot of them, to family and friends that I felt would, would really use them, would benefit from them and that would cherish them. And so, I found family members that could fit his clothing, who can fit his shoes, and I shared all of that stuff up with them. And so for me, it was like when I see a friend and he said, "Oh, I have on Byron's hat," or, "Oh, see, I have on Byron's shirt." And it made me feel good that they cherished the stuff that I gave. And I would say, my husband was a, flair man. He was one of those, he liked really nice things. So they got nice things. And but it made me feel good that they would cherish something as simple as that, right? So it was nothing but a t-shirt, nothing but a pair of shoes, but they felt the need to say, "Oh yeah, you remember this? This was Byron." And so that made it so much easier giving it away, as opposed to just taking it all to Goodwill. And someone had suggested doing a yard sale. But I
Mm.
said, okay, so I do a yard sale and I'll sell the shirt for $2. Why?
Right.
Why not just give it to someone that I know could use it? So that made me feel good to be able to do it. And I think that made it hurt less to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, I'm going to get back into the book, but I have one more question before we get back to the book.
Mhm.
Um, how did the whole process affect you health wise? Because I know for me, after you know, being my wife was in a coma for about a week before they had to terminate life support.
Mhm.
The process of that, planning a funeral, and fortunately, I had a friend stay because I did have to have him. I had a friend staying with me and my son for a weekend. I got, I'm not gonna say I got sick. I didn't have a cold. It wasn't symptoms of a cold. Wasn't a cold, but it took me all weekend. It was like I was running but standing still, and it took me all week. Fortunately, like I said, my son was 7, and she's a friend of the family, and I trusted her. Where I trusted her, she took care of the house, took care of my son, and everything. That whole weekend, while I just laid in bed recovering from whatever this was. But
Mhm.
Monday, when I got up, I just felt completely rested.
Mhm.
Have you ever felt like that after the
I
fact?
had the I had the moments. Health wise, the major thing for me obviously was the lack of focus. I think somehow, even though I wasn't prepared, I was still prepared, because we had gone through cancer for a while, for almost a year. But it was, I mean, he never went through any pain. He was, he'd lost a bunch of weight, gained it back, so it was still hope that he will be okay. Once we got on the other side of this, he would be okay. And so I think, so as we were going through that process, I didn't, I don't think I focused so much on me, but I did have people that said, I need you to, as a caregiver, I need you to take some time and do some, do what you need for yourself. So getting a counselor was something that I had while we were going through his illness. So it helped mentally, that I think it didn't spill over so much physically. And I think that helped a lot. Um, the restlessness, I did at some point where, some moments where I couldn't sleep. And, so it's like you sleep, you wake up. And I think for me, part of that was fear. And the fear was that, okay, so I'd never lived by myself before. I'd always, moved out of my parents' house to my grandmother's house to go to school. And then I had a daughter. And so when I moved to the US, my daughter was with me. So I had a roommate in college. I always had someone living in the house with me. Well, then when he passed, it was just me. And I found that fear was really, really strong at some point, because I'm usually the person, I'd always been the person, if the bedroom needed to be painted, I'm going to be the person that climbs up on the ladder and paint the bedroom. And I found that when I started doing things like that, it would be, well, if you fall, who's going to know you fall? You lay here and, if my daughter doesn't come, and, I always had for a while shared my location with her on my phone. But if she had looked at her phone, say she was calling me and then she couldn't get me, she looked at her phone, well, she would see that I was home. And so it was like, okay, but then she would see that I was home, but she wouldn't know that something's wrong. So like it just kept, that was a big thing. The sleeping at night was more of, I kept getting up and checking doors. Like I check the door, I check the windows, make sure that I locked everything. And so there was that constant, or I didn't go out much at nights. Because I think at that point, we were just in October, time was changing. So we were going back to where it's dark early in the evening. And so once I got home from work most days, I didn't go anywhere, because there was still, that fear of when you come home, or what happens if someone's there when you come home? And, I mean, and obviously I wasn't thinking logically, because I have an alarm system and I have a big dog. So all of these things were here. So a lot of it wasn't justified, but I would still get up in the middle of the night to check. And then sometimes not being able to go to sleep. But, a friend of mine had given me melatonin while my husband was going through the cancer, as a way to sleep. And so that helped me a lot as well. So I just kind of, take melatonin and sleep through the night as best as I could.
Right, yeah, I love that. So now let's get back to the book. So you have this book. When you wrote the book, were you thinking, this is a way I can use my experience to help others? What, as you were writing the book, what were a lot of your goals?
The goal was to help someone else. As I was going through this whole grief process, so I am a Christian. I've been a woman of faith for years. And I understood that when we go through things, it's not always for us. And, listen, I would love to have my husband here. But I realized that the reality is he's not. So what am I going to do moving forward? And so one of the questions that I've been asking God is like, okay, so what's next? Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? How do I get through this? And like I said, writing was something that I did before. So it was easy to just write something. And I've been doing all of the journaling, just the regular writing things down myself. But being a part of a book group, one of the ladies in the book group said, "Why don't we challenge ourselves and write journals?" And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool." And I had the thought in my head of what I was going to do, and but it wasn't that. So I had this thought, and we talked about it in the group, like, oh, okay, well, maybe I could talk about. I wanted to talk about grief, but I knew that for me, I'm a teacher by nature, so I'm always going to give instructions as to what to do. Like, I can't just give you a journal and say, okay, well, write about your grief. I like to give a little bit instructions of it, and I'm always open with my experiences for the most part. And so I figured, as I'm telling you what to write or giving you some ideas of what you need to write in this journal, I'm also sharing my experiences as to, how I got through certain things, some of the things that I did, because I think although I want to be spiritual, I also like to be practical. And so as I was going through, I was writing down these things. Okay, so if it was me on the other side reading this journal, what would I have liked for someone to tell me as I was writing this information? Because I mean, like, sometimes someone gives you something and say, write about this, or write a love letter to your spouse. And you're sitting there like, okay, well, what am I supposed to write? So I ask questions. The check-in, the morning and evening check-ins, I ask those questions. And then when we get to the letter, then I say, well, use the questions that you've asked during the week, or some of the information that you've put in during the week in your love letter. Because in one of the questions in the check-in was, what did I do what memory that I have of my spouse this week? And, and so for 5 days, for 7 days, you're writing the memory of your spouse for that week. And so then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, well, now I can write about some of the memories that I had. I asked, what did not go well? Like, what was the hard thing that you had to deal with this week? What triggers did you have this week? Because for many of us, there are so many things that could trigger us. It could be, like for me, one minute I've been listening to a song and, I'm all smiling and dancing to the song. And then another second, it's like, and I'm boohoo crying. So there are so many triggers, something someone may have said, a picture you may have looked at in that moment. You look at it, you think about what happened, you smile, and then immediately you're crying. So I have those things, like what things triggered you this week? What things triggered you today? What did you get done? What did you need to get done? And so the thought process was, then you write some of the things that you had already written that week. So you're not thinking about it so much. But then I also say, if you don't want to talk about any of those things, you have something else that's pressing on your mind, then talk about that.
What are your goals? What are your goals with the book? Who, as far as helping your readers?
Okay, so my goal obviously is to help a woman who is struggling. You lost a husband. You're trying to just figure out what's next, figure out what the day-to-day things that you have to get done, because you don't know. And so my goal was to make sure that as women, we have some help, because I realize, and it could be the same for men as well, but I speak from my experience, is sometimes people can prey on someone who is vulnerable. And you're vulnerable, you don't know what's going on. Someone comes in and says, oh yeah, well, you just do this, or you do this. And because you don't know what needs to be done, you end up just falling for whatever it is that they say needs to be done. And so I want us to be empowered. I want to empower women to know what it is that they need to know in these moments, and then work along with it.
Welcome to Sassy's Shirt Shop, where quality meets professional meets fun. If you need a t-shirt for your events, your business, your sports teams, and more. Sassy Shirt Shop has the designs for you. We accommodate t-shirts, sweatshirts, and jackets of all sizes, all events, all specific to your needs. Ordering is easy. You can place your orders over the phone at 314-229-7163 for a quote. You can email Sassy at sassyshirtshop@gmail.com, or you can log on to her website at www.sassyshirtshop.com, where she can also do custom merchandising as well as cups and ball caps. What can Sassy Thomas design for you? Let her know and find out. See you soon. In today's HD 2 cents, I want to talk about not writing tools per se. I want to talk about the people around your hustle. You have to be careful with with whom's around you when you're doing your hustle, or you have to be careful with your circle of friends. When I was a kid, I used to carry a notebook around, always writing in it. 99% of everybody was cool with it. Had one friend in particular, or I thought she was a friend, who would get mad every time I bring a notebook, or write in a notebook. Even though it wasn't bothering her or affecting her in any way. No, she wasn't someone I was dating or anything, but it was just more of, I was out with friends, and I was still interacting with friends, but as ideas come down, I'm going to write them down. It's mainly what made me become a good author today. I write ideas down wherever I find them. But what I want to say is, be careful of those who want you to stop what you're doing just to please them. Or stop what you're doing because, I don't know, maybe it bothers them to see you elevate, maybe it bothers them to see you doing something with your life. And a lot of times, most people that do that don't want to be bothered with you or your time. They just want to control you. I've had that in relationships, I've had that in friendships, and those are friendships and relationships I had to leave. How are you going to become successful if you don't take the time out to work for the success? Now, I'm not saying not take time off and rest and all. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about taking the time you need to get from point A to point B. Because that same person that's stopping you from doing what you need to do is also a hater. They're waiting for you to fail. They're going to say, the minute you stop and you start taking time out with them, they told you what they're going to do anyway. Told you stuff doesn't work. Well, how do you know? Right now, I'm just posting a second show. I don't know if the person is around anymore or where they are, but I'm posting a second show. I have books coming out. I run a successful publishing company. I have a lot of things going on, and I'm doing a lot more growing. So, for this, I say, keep your haters behind you. Keep them close. What I mean by keep them close is, don't put them in your circle, but at least close enough to see your success. So that's one less thing they can talk about. Because for that one hater, you're going to have 10 that's going to ask, are you hiring? Well, that's it for the Author's Corner. Stay tuned for the Artist Corner coming on right after this show. And trust me, like I say, we're going to have comedian Ronnie J, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the show and how to get on the show. But if you want to get on the Author's Corner, you can always hit me up on Facebook under AC Campbell, AC Campbell Books, or AC Television. You can hit me on Twitter. You can hit me on Instagram. Or you can hit me on LinkedIn. Actually, I'm also on Pinterest. So, either way, you can always hit me up. Or you can always do my email at hdcampbell3@msn.com. That's the Author's Corner. Peace, hair grease, which I have done. And as always, let your writing fuel your spirit, and God bless you.